Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepointe Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepointe helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
Winston Churchill said, "Perfection is the enemy of progress." And yet so many small and mid-sized businesses are so intimidated by the expectation of perfection that they're apathetic towards cybersecurity. There's a big difference between being a target and an accident. A criminal trying to get into your house always checks to see if the doors are locked first. Many will move on to easier pickings. Basic protections make you less interesting, and yet many small businesses fail to do even that. Or they fall for the latest techno gimmick and overbuild something they can't manage. My guest on this episode of The Bridge is Mark Houpt. He's currently the CISO for DataBank, naval security, insurance, higher ed, mortgages. If you can dream it, he's seen it. And he's here to tell you that you don't have to be perfect. You just need to follow simple business principles. Plan, document, do what you can with what you have, avoid gimmicks, and focus on the basics. A practical approach to cybersecurity from a longtime CISO and current host of the CISO Corner podcast. If you enjoy conversations like this, please give us a like or follow on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. But now, keeping security simple with DataBank's Mark Houpt. Well, hi, and welcome to another episode of The Bridge. I'm excited about this one. Our pre-call was great. My guest on this episode is Mark Houpt. He's the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer at DataBank. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you very much, Scott. It is my pleasure to be here. And yes, our pre-call was fantastic. So let's get this rolling.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Where are we speaking from? Where are you located?
A bunker in a cornfield in central Illinois. That's where I'm at. No, I'm not Chicago.
Is this your bunker? Are you one of those guys, or is this
No.
Are you in a data center?
No, I'm actually a remote employee, and so is the rest of my team. So that's why I kind of play that. Anytime I say Illinois, people immediately think Chicago, and I'm 200 miles south of Chicago, right in the center of the state. That's why I say that. So
fantastic. Have you always been from Illinois?
No. I've grown up, I'm a military brat, and some would say I'm just plain brat, but I've grown up all over the world, the UK, Japan, all across this country. I was active duty myself. My father did 20 years active duty, so I've got a lot of experience running around the country and doing different places. But I've been here in Illinois for the last, I would say about 15 years, and from my military clock, it's time to pull the plug and get moving.
Well, I was just going to ask, and no offense to central Illinois as you laid out there, but you mentioned a lot of exotic places, and then you just spent 15 years self-described in a bunker in a cornfield.
Yeah. Well, we decided that my wife and I were married and started our life in Indianapolis. The boys, we have 3 boys, and they were born over there. And then as they started school, we had an opportunity to move over here for a couple of years to serve in a location. And then we decided, no, the kids are going to be able to graduate from school in one place. They all have now graduated from school. We are empty nesters, and our wings are sprouting. How's that?
I get that. Well, we are in similar spots. Raised 3 here in Westchester, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. And I have a full house only because it currently happens to be spring break at Penn State, and 2 of them are home. But my third is already flown, and I have one about to graduate. So we are, it's pretty quiet around here most days, except when Gene and I have recording days like today, and we're trying to lay down a handful of episodes of The Bridge here. Well, that's fantastic. Tell me how you got to, we got the military career. Did you go straight from there into DataBank?
No, 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 no. I was in the military from 91 through 95 active duty, and I started at DataBank in 2015. So I had a 20-year gap between military and DataBank. And during that period of time, I did everything I could to stay in security. That's really where my passion is. I started in the military working with the Naval Security Group activity doing cryptology, and I tried my hardest to stay in that. But I worked at healthcare companies. I worked at finance companies and spent 7 years as a CTO and a CISO at an educational institution before transitioning over to DataBank in 2015. So I've been here over 9 years now. I started in January of 2015. And so over 9 years as CISO the entire time, which is an incredible amount of time for any
Yeah.
CISO, since we have a lifespan of about 2 to 3 years.
Mathematically, the statistics would tell you that, right? Which is an
Right.
amazing story. And I want to get there at DataBank in a minute, but just quickly to put it in perspective, oftentimes when you meet people from service providers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of customer experience. So it's interesting. You've got 9 years
Right.
at DataBank, but all of your experience before that was as an act. I mean, you've sat in the CISO seat. Let's be
Oh,
clear.
yeah.
And now you're serving CISO problems. Is that a good way for me to think about it?
Yeah, I've served in many different types of seats and learned that customer service skill. But yes, I've been a CISO before I was here at DataBank. I've grown with the company from 80 people to now over 800 people, from just a few data centers, literally 2 data centers, up to now over 70 data centers. So I've grown with the company during that period of time, and my skills and my abilities have grown during that period of time as well. So.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about DataBank in a minute, but I want to just finish clicking in on one thing. You're super active in the CISO community. I mean, when I did my, pre-game research before we got on there, and I went on YouTube and I looked you up, you were on a bunch of everybody else's podcasts, but also looked like you were hosting quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about CISO Corner that you guys run.
Yeah, so DataBank runs CISO Corner, and the podcast got started as an opportunity for us to work with our own sales teams to educate them, and work with our internal teams, including our customers, to communicate to them about security product that we have and changes that we're going to make. We always said it's a non-contractual binding conversation, but it does give the customer, it gives the people a better understanding of how we do things and what we do. Because one of the things we like to be transparent. And I jokingly called myself the transparent CISO, which is completely contradictory to what most CISOs are. They like to hide and not be seen. But
Yeah.
I believe, and DataBank believes, that if we can be out there and talking about these things, that is going to make everyone better. And that's really the intent of CISO Corners. How can I help you be better, whether you're a CIO, a CEO, or even, the way I talk about these things sometimes is even right down to the first year person that's come out of college, that's come into the environment. Hey, here's how you do security, and here's best how to do that, and just kind of help people along the way.
That's awesome. And you guys are about to start up another season of that coming up shortly, right?
We're hoping to, yes. And we do about one a month. And we've had conversations with our own vendors, and, talked about bug bounties and how those patches get developed and work out. We've had conversations with leading experts on the criminal justice information system and state ramp. And then we've had our own internal conversations as well with my director of compliance and my director of physical security and security architecture, and just kind of described how those roles work within the organization. So there's a lot of information out there over the past few years.
That's great. We'll make sure that we include, nodding to our producer, Gene, a link to that in the show notes so that people can check that out. One last question just on you, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about DataBank before we kind of get into the meat of the conversation. When I talk to people who are in a role, kind of a traditional role that most companies would have, whether they're a service provider or not, there's always the question of like, are you that role for the service provider facing customers? Are you also that role for you as a business entity? So you are the CISO for the business entity, and representing product and towards customers. Is that a good way for me to look at it?
Yes. And I would even layer on that customers come to us and ask my advice, ask the advice of my team, because a lot of, one of the things that we promote at DataBank is that we're here to help you get your workloads into the environments that you have and best secure them or best operate them in the case of our cloud or network team. And so, yes, my first and foremost role is to be the CISO of DataBank and guide and empower our teams internally to apply security, not only to our customers' environments, but to ours. But I also have that external role where I get on the phone with prospective customers. I get on the phone with current customers, and we talk through the needs and we talk through the various pieces that are necessary to ensure a secure environment. In fact, just this afternoon, after this call, I'll be on with one of our customers talking through a couple of challenges. So
I love that. So I'm going to ask you for people that don't know the DataBank story. I mean, you gave a little bit of it, 2 data centers now, I think you said something like 70 or 80 data centers, 28 employees to 800. Give us a little bit of that story. While you're doing that, though, I was listening very intently when you were talking about the role, and you sort of put security in, like, yes, as a data center provider, but you're helping people get workloads and secure them. Is security, if I were to ask anybody in DataBank, give me the one sentence on DataBank, would security be in the descriptor of the workload transition for everybody? Yes. I mean, is it that core to what you guys do?
Yeah, in fact, that conversation would be, helping people secure their workloads or helping them, develop workloads that are secure. So yes, I think that security would be a significant piece of that conversation if you talk to most people, if not all people at DataBank. I'll go back to the story in just a second, but we've got, the Magic Quadrant, and we went out and asked our leadership. We went and asked our board members, and we asked our customers, what is the most important thing that DataBank needs to do strategically in the next 3 to 5 years in order to succeed? And security was the top thing. In the top far right-hand quadrant of that is maintain the security that we have, increase the security that we have, and make sure that we're meeting our customers' needs. So all 3 of the leadership factors, our own leadership, our boards, and our customers all said security is the top thing that we need to keep our eyes on. So that's that security will be spoken there. But going back to the DataBank story real quick, 2005 DataBank was born in Dallas, Texas. And it was born inside of the former Federal Reserve building in downtown Dallas, across from the headquarters of a very large communications firm that may or may not have had some problems in the past few weeks.
Yeah.
And so right down there, an old building, and we took that over, and that's how we got our name. It's like, hey, we're going to be storing data, and we're going to be storing it in the Federal Reserve Bank there that's in Dallas. And so
I've been to the building. It's super impressive, and it's really interesting. Yeah.
Well,
it's unmistakable. That's for sure.
That is true. And then there's 2 little secrets about that building if you haven't seen them. But if you ever come to Dallas, what we call Dallas 1, our headquarters building, ask for a tour of the vault and ask for a tour of the gun range, because down there, the guards from the Federal Reserve used to go down in the basement and practice shooting their pistols and their Tommy guns, and they have a gun range in the basement.
Well, I didn't get that on my tour. This is probably going back 15 years now, or whatever, 12 years. So I feel a little bit gypped, but I will get it next time. And, maybe you'll be there and we can do it together. But so tell me more. So from then, building up from that building.
Yeah, so building up from that, our founder and teams, they built an organization that was very viable and sustainable up until about 2015. And then, of course, data centers were taking off in the early 2010s. And so they brought on investors, and they brought on some additional management people. And by the way, some of our key founders are still with DataBank today. Okay, so we didn't sell out and get rid of them or anything, but they're still there. And so what DataBank did from essentially 2015 until about 2020 or 2021 is that we built a business by acquiring other smaller data center. In fact, one of them was much larger than us, but we acquired a number of additional businesses. like Edge Hosting and C7 out in Salt Lake. And the biggest acquisition we had was Zcolo coming out of Zayo. So we bought Zayo's data center business because they wanted to focus on the telecommunications piece. So we bought that, and that was the launching pad for who we are. Now we're doing more organic growth where we're buying the real estate and we're building the data centers ourselves. We're building these 800,000 square foot buildings, and we are filling them before we can even get them built. So in a nutshell, that's the DataBank story is, from how we got our name to who we are today in just continuing to grow. And like I said, in 2017, we had about 100, 125 people. And here in 2024, we're topping over 800. We were at 10 data centers in 2018 timeframe, and now we're over 70 data centers. So it's just an incredible growth trajectory.
Mark, all domestic on the data centers, or have you crossed the pond?
Good question. So our focus is on domestic, but we do have a data center in London that was part of the Zcolo acquisition, and we love them, but they're over in London. And originally part of the Zcolo acquisition, we also had 5 data centers in France. But if you go back and look at our history, we divested ourselves of them and sold them to a company last year in order to focus on our U.S. and then the British side of things, since they also speak English, and we can work with those kinds of things fairly easily.
Yeah, I've acquired and integrated European businesses, and I agree. Like for me, the Netherlands. The challenge with the Netherlands, obviously, is you get in the EU, and then certainly as a CISO, the regulatory environment becomes wildly different, right? Yes, so I get it. Great stories. Let's slide back to the security side for a moment. I want to double click on something that you said earlier on your side. You said the 3 constituencies that you interviewed all said security was the most important thing, top right quadrant. Like, here's what we have going on. We regularly here on the Bridge talk about, and we use at Bridgepointe research from Bain and Company, where they have this kind of quarterly sentiment survey about, is your budget going up and down? Do you have concern about the budget? What are the macroeconomic things you're hearing about your budget? What does that mean your priorities look like? How have your priorities changed? So it's nice. We get to kind of look at we constantly look at the priority list quarter over quarter, right? And so now here we are, 12 quarters in a row. Security's number one. And everything below it, like bucks and weaves and moves, and it was AI, and now, believe it or not, now IT cost containment is number 2, and we way ahead of everything else. And it's pretty logical, right? We want to spend money on AI, we just got to go find it because the budget didn't go up, right? But security hasn't moved, and I, it sounds simple. Okay, yeah, sure. Like if something goes bad from a security perspective, it's it's earth shattering to the business, so it should be number 1, of course, right? But is there a point? Or isn't there a point, or shouldn't there be a point where, it's less of a priority because we have it on the rails? Where, why is it still number 1 in your mind?
Yeah, well, it's going to stay number 1 until we finally don't have any attackers out there, which means that it's always going to be number 1. But that's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek type of conversation, but it's going to be number 1, and it's going to continue to stay number 1 because of the fact that right now, because of regulation. So if you would ask me that same question 5 years ago, I would have told you it's because of ransomware, it's because of the attackers, and it's because of reputational harm as a result of the attacks that are happening could bring down a business.
Fair.
But today I'm going to tell you it's because of regulation. It's not just privacy regulation, although that is a very significant piece of it right now with, GDPR coming on board a number of years ago, and then the California Consumer Privacy Act and its subsequent renditions. There is talk in Washington of having a national privacy law that exceeds or is equivalent to CCPA. The SEC has gotten involved with regulations for those that are traded companies. States have gotten involved. And the reason that they keep getting involved is because their constituents Their constituents, not meaning the voters, but those who are really the ones that are kind of paying the bills in the sense of the lobbyists and whatnot, the business owners and the business folks out there. The regulations are coming along because there are lobbyists and there are people out there saying we cannot have another Colonial Pipeline that shuts down the gas environment. We cannot have another major situation where, this attack or that attack causes massive impact upon the economy and the people of the nation. There is plenty of willingness to allow individual companies to be attacked. But when you have a Colonial Pipeline or you have a major infrastructure type of attack that occurs that causes the pain at the wallet and pain of the individuals on widespread, that's where this is coming from. So what you see now is in response to executive orders that have come out of the White House that have said if you are even remotely a part of infrastructure, and they've defined it in such a broad way that even DataBank could be considered as part of the infrastructure environment, not just an energy producer, because we host energy producers, then you have to comply with X, Y, and Z. Now, the interesting thing is that CCPA, the executive orders, which we'll call EOs going forward, and things like that have not really been tested in court. In fact, GDPR, they try and enforce their European rulings with GDPR on the US, but it's never been tested in court. So it's going to be interesting when it finally rises to the level of being tested in court, and then we start seeing that type of pushback. That's a long-winded answer to tell you that is why security is currently top of the mind. Yes, there's attackers coming in. Yes, there's insurance that's paying on the ransomware. But right now, it's the regulatory environment that is pushing that. Nobody wants to be the one who tests the court case.
Yeah, you don't want to be the precedent by which all others are measured, right? In that regard.
Absolutely not.
Totally makes sense. And we've had quite a bit of conversation around regulatory on the pod about, none of it's real until there is precedent set. But the reality of it is it's real enough that you've got to react to it. Right. I think the interpretation, I find the thing that CIOs or directors of IT that I talk to are challenged with is that they look at the razor's edge of these regulations and they're like, we have to be perfect. And I'm like, you don't have to be perfect. You have to have a plan. It's got to be documented. The documentation has to match the regulation at the very least, the minimum.
At least the spirit of the regulation.
Yeah, it's the spirit of the regulation. And then you have to be able to prove that you execute on it and that you test it. I mean, it's not that onerous, but I guess to your point, I mean, this really is, well, of course it's onerous, but you know what I mean? It's not like you're not expected to be any more perfect than the industry can be perfect, but you are expected to do all the things that the industry lays out as acceptable practices, particularly in that individual regulatory environment.
Right. And in your contracts, there's 3 words that you're going to be looking for. It's industry best practices.
100%.
And those are the 3 words that, DataBank, anybody else that's a service provider is using to say and guarantee to you that we're following these regulations within a close proximity of the spirit of the regulations.
Yeah.
And especially until some of them are tested. When a couple of them might be tested, then we may have to tighten some things up, or we may get to loosen some things up. But but certainly that's the going precedent right now.
Certainly. Let's take one step back. You mentioned that's the going concern now, but if we asked you the question a couple of years ago, it would really be about the threat landscape. And of course, we know the threat landscape is ever evolving. It's not going to go away. But are there new? Is it primarily variations on the same kind of things that we've been concerned about since that period of time a couple of years ago, or they're sort of wholly new types of threats in the landscape right now that you and the rest of the CISO community and as well as your customers are concerned about?
Yeah, all the above. I think that, first of all, yes, ransomware, DDoS attacks, things like that, the tried and true scenarios are still out there and very prevalent. But what I think has changed a little bit is that there is a little less fear now than there used to be. So, 5, 6, 7 years ago, getting hit by a ransomware attack had a good percentage of destroying your business, either by reputation or actually destroying your business where you had to shut your doors. We don't hear so much anymore about businesses shutting because of ransomware. And there's a reason for that. And that's because a lot of companies, healthcare is one of the biggest attacked environments, academics is the other, is because they've caught up on some of the best practices, use that term again, that should have already been in place back then. And things like, for example, having immutable backups. You can call that a security problem by not having them, or you can call it an IT problem, just the same. You should have had immutable backups to begin with. And just for those of you that don't understand what immutable backups are, it's different than a regular backup. A backup is one that you take the backup, you've got the data. It may be encrypted, but you can pull it back, the information back. And the ransomware attackers figured out how to get their ransomware into those backups.
Yeah.
But the immutable backups are ones that have a lot of features placed upon them so that you can see where they haven't been changed. That's the key with the immutable piece. But those immutable systems that are putting those timestamps and locking them down so that they can be used are also doing a lot of scrubbing. They're layering on security pieces to make sure that the bad stuff is not in there. And so, again, 5 years ago, I think there was a lot of fear in it. Now it's more along the lines of, yeah, it's going to happen. It's not going to close my doors. But, as we've seen with health partners here the past couple of weeks, we may have to turn the web service off, or we may have to turn our business off for a couple of days in order to recover from it, but we're not closing the doors.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big change in the past couple of years. But let me be clear about this. One thing, the threats have not diminished. The threats have not gone away. In fact, what we're dealing with now more than ever, and the FBI director came out and just said this the other day, and we're recording this in late February, so you can go historically look at the week of February 26th or the previous week. The FBI director came out and said, look, what we call advanced persistent threats, because nobody wants to call a nation out by name on things like this podcast because they don't want to draw that type of attention. Even the government doesn't necessarily want to, but the FBI director came out and said APTs. And in that case, he actually said a country name that you can guess what it was or go look it up. But these people are deliberately placing threats inside of our systems, our infrastructure systems, that are essentially going to be time bombs, so that in their insurance policy. So if we ever do get in an armed conflict with these other nations, they can punch a button that theoretically could fire it off and impact everybody in the U.S., everybody as part of a payment card system or whatever it may be. So the threats have not gone away. In fact, the threats have increased because they're sitting there dormant. And the question is, how are we as business leaders, as I'm as a CISO, going to say, hey, it's not impacting me today, so I'm not worried about it. I'm going to ride out my next 3 or 4 years in this job, and I'm going to move on to the next one and let the next guy take care of this. No. That's not how I look at it, but unfortunately, that's how some people look at it. As long as it doesn't happen on my watch, as long as that time bomb doesn't go off on my watch, then I'm good. The FBI director is saying, look, people, get your head on straight, because this is a problem. Address it, or we're gonna have problems if there is a kinetic or an actual armed conflict that occurs between the nations.
Got it.
The other thing, and I'll just say this very quickly, the other thing we have to understand right now is there are things going on in the Middle East. There are things going on in Eastern Europe, as we all well know. And there is literally, and not figuratively, but literally, a cyber warfare going on between nations right now. Again, if you go look in the news and look for things, you can see that one nation attacked from a cyber perspective, a boat sitting out in the Red Sea because it was doing command and control for groups that are on land in that area that are doing attacks. So there is literally a cyber war going on right now. It's under the covers, and we have to be prepared for that and be careful but we don't see it. So it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. Is that of all of the, I mean, you're a CISO. You live in what if every day, right?
Yes.
Is that situation that you just talked about the thing that scares you the most?
No, because this is going to sound ridiculous.
You don't scare.
No, I don't scare. I've been around enough, but I'll be honest with you. I have faith in our military and intelligence systems that they can handle this. And even if we get taken down for a couple of days, that we have ways to get back. Let me just give you a small example of that. That has nothing to do with military. Okay. Last year, I went on a trip to Alaska. I went all the way up into Ukqiavik or Barrow, all the way at the top of the state of Alaska, farthest place you can go in North America, in a city. And they had an undersea cable that was cut as a result of some anchorage type of things that were going on. Within 2 days, those people had their internet back up because of Starlink. So I believe that we're residual. We have enough. We have enough resistance. We have enough capability to overcome the challenges that are in front of us. So that kind of thing is not what keeps me up. What keeps me up is the apathy that we have and the ignorance that we have towards these things. Because there's, for every large business out there that takes cybersecurity seriously, there's 500 small businesses and medium-sized businesses that either don't know what to do or choose to be ignorant of it, because if they stick their head in the sand and walk away from it, then they don't have to pay for it. And they're the ones that are developing the software, and they're the ones that are doing the consulting and the managed services programs for these larger companies and for other companies. And I think just like we saw almost 10 years ago with Target situation, the attack is going to come in through the back door. Yep. And it's going to come in through those SMBs. It's going to come in through that HVAC company that got, that allowed the attackers to get into Target, not Target themselves. And so we have to be prepared for that. That's what bothers me is that back door, not the front door.
Okay. So let's, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yep.
You have a small business. I won't even say CIO. A small business. There is no CIO in this.
Director of IT.
Small business director of IT in front of you, and he's listening to this episode.
Yep.
And he goes, "Crap, I'm in that group that Mark's talking about."
Yep.
Right. And you get 60 seconds with him to tell him one thing to do. What's the one piece of advice that you'd give him?
Don't ignore it. Document your situation, because most of the times those 27 to 30-year-old director of ITs that's trying to climb the ladder and get to the position where they can be that CIO are trying to learn to talk to the business owners, and the business owners are going, no, I don't have the money to pay for it. Stop talking about that. So my advice is create a culture and talk about it. Number one, don't ignore it. And number two, document your communications, because and keep your communications in a place that you have access to them.
I get you.
Because
when it comes downhill, you want to be able to have said what you offered, right? What you shared, your concerns.
Yeah, that's the practical advice. The rest of it is this: do what you can with what you have. Okay, I'm a CISO at DataBank. And it's not going to be any secret to my leadership when I say, look, I could always use more money. I could use more people. But what I do is I create a 3 to 5 year strategic plan and a business plan. And I say, look, these are my biggest risks, and we're going to tackle the things that I'm getting support for, and we're going to tackle the things that we can afford and we can deal with. And we're going to apply risk to the others. And we're going to have conversations about those on a monthly basis during our capacity planning calls. And we're going to address those and make sure everybody's on the same page with how we're doing budgeting and how we're addressing these scenarios, including setting it aside if that's what we need to do. Yeah. But that's my key is have a strategic plan, talk about it, and do what you can with what you have. Don't just give up because they aren't giving you the money.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, every operating system in that business, even if they have nothing going on from a security perspective, has a local firewall on it on the operating system. It's got a patch policy on it. Like just make sure that the stuff that you have is as tight as it can be, is the first start. That's really, really good advice. I appreciate that.
There's so many free things you can do. Another piece of advice real quick is
go.
Don't fall for all the gimmicks and the latest, phrasing of things out there. One of the things I pushed back on the past couple of years is zero trust. Zero trust is just least privilege. That was written as a college paper in the middle 1990s. If you go and apply least privilege to your environment and effectively do it, if you do the hygienic things, you patch the systems, which is free. You do least privilege, which is free. What you're going to do is you're going to tell those attackers when they're knocking on your door, it isn't easy to get in here.
Yeah.
And if you want to fight, let's have a fight. But most, easily 90+% of the attackers are going to go someplace where when they jiggle the door flies
wide. The door's unlocked. Exactly.
And if you keep your door locked the best you can with what you have, they're going to go away.
Completely. Yeah, I mean, look, a well-organized bad actor has a really good shot of finding some way of doing something, but most are not well-organized. They're just hitting ranges of IPs and seeing, whose door. I like your thing. Jiggle the doorknob, and that's where they're going to spend their time. So that's really good advice. I have one more kind of security-related question, then we're going to get to some fun before we wrap because we're running up against it. You mentioned earlier a little bit about the CISO. And I didn't say this, you did. It's your community, but I love it. You were like, sometimes the CISO hides. And I've been involved in some conversations. Look, we deliver product in multiple categories from you guys. We have a huge data center and cloud practice. We have a massive network transformation practice, and we have a very big security practice. And we're running into deals where it's impossible to not sell all three at the same time. You know what I mean? So we're like, they even separate network and security at this point. But here's the challenge. When we're dealing with customers who are big enough to have an IT department and a CISO of the security department, sometimes it's, it's very difficult to sell a simple edge security network-based product because of that organization. Do you find the same thing?
Absolutely. It's everywhere and anywhere. I firmly believe that in order for a CISO to do their best work, they have to focus on relationships. And sometimes they have to give and sometimes they have to take. And so in order for, this goes back to our conversation just a moment ago, do with what you have. And I try, instead of hiding in the corner or hiding in the cornfield of Illinois, I try to get out and I talk to our people. Could I do it better? Of course. There's probably some people on the DataBank team that might listen to this and go, "Oh, yeah, you could be better at that." Yes, I could be better at that.
Can't we all, Mark?
I'm not the CISO or I'm not the security guy that's sitting with a trench coat and long hair in my mother's basement hacking away. Okay, I'm out there. I'm talking on things like this. I'm talking to our own people internally, and I'm not going to say I'm doing politics or making deals, but it's like I told my director of compliance yesterday. She's like, "Hey, this team's willing to work, and this one's not." I'm like, "Go with the one that's willing to work. Go with it and get as much done as you can with that individual. Gain some reputation so that team then talks to the other team and says, "Hey, the director of compliance was really easy to work with. They aren't as bad as legend says." And so then you go and you work with people as best you can. Shake hands, kiss babies, whatever you got to do, right?
Mark, there's a business trope we use internally here that I wonder if it's applicable here, which is, if you're in the security office, your job is, let's be honest, is generally to say no to people, right? You got to keep the door locked. So we always say, just find a way to say yes. You don't have to say yes. Find a way to say yes. Like, I can't do that for you because it's against our policy, but I can do this. That alone would soften it, right?
We do the same thing. There are times where we have to say no, but in fact, sometimes people come to us and say, "Please say no," because I don't want to say no. I had that. We literally had that 2 days ago. We had somebody come to us from the network team and says, "Please say no." And I'm like, why do you want me to say no? But I have a rule around here. You say yes, but, or yes, if.
Love it.
Say, "Hey, we could do this, but you have to put these controls in place. We could do this if this criteria is met."
I love that.
And so that's how we operate.
Well, that's sage advice for that young director of IT that we were both speaking to earlier as well. I think it's good career advice. This has been an awesome conversation, Mark. Let's end with some fun because we're right up against it, and we'll just rapid fire these. All right. So here's the first one. This isn't as much fun, but I put it in the fun section. What are you reading right now? And it doesn't need to be technical. It can be in any, but what are you reading right now that you'd love to pass on?
I'm reading The Integrity Gap right now. I'm wrapping that up for a college class.
Okay.
So,
and what's The Integrity Gap about?
It talks about how people have masks on and they don't tell the truth in order to save face, and things along those lines where people just in society today they're afraid to come right out with the truth, and so therefore they create a gap between what they really think and what they say. Got it.
That's super interesting. That's what I'm going to check out. All right. This is probably the most fun one. Whatever the next pandemic occurs, but it's way more dramatic than this one. So you can insert whatever kind of movies you like, just insert that future, right? And only one application still works on your phone. You get to choose. Mm-hmm. What's your end of the world app?
So I'm a big fan of Hunt for Red October.
Okay.
So there's got to be an app out there that says one ping Vasily. I've got to find a way where I can easily communicate with people. So an app that will do that, something like Signal or something along those lines.
I like it. Now you're very practical. We've had all kinds of answers to that one. I really honestly think the most interesting answer that I've ever gotten was flashlight, which is a really good answer. I mean, you have to still power it, but you went right down to layer one there. I appreciate that. You're definitely a CISO. All right. Last one here. And you can answer this however you want. It can be tech, it can be business, it can be sports, it can be fun, it could be in your life. It doesn't matter. But I want to look back at this episode 12 to 18 months from now. So make some kind of prediction.
Some kind of prediction. I'm a Cubs fan. Cubs win the World Series, but that's not as good as it used to be during Back to the Future. So my prediction is probably unfortunate, but the situations that are going on in the world right now that continue to boil will be worse than they are today. Okay. And that we in the cyber world are going to have to deal with that. And artificial intelligence will be a big part of that.
Okay. All right. Well, we will. That's a whole episode in and of itself, Mark. So we're just going to cut it there and leave people wanting more. Maybe we'll do this again. No, I appreciate it, Mark. This was a great conversation and a great time. And we're super grateful, as I know our whole audience is, that you were able to give us this time today and share your insights. Sage advice in this episode, by the way, if you're a director of IT or a young CIO, trying to figure out, or CISO, depending on which role you're in, trying to figure out what your path is here. So, Mark, I really appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us here.
All right. Thank you.
Everyone, Mark is the CISO at DataBank, Mark Houpt, and we're looking forward to more from Mark and more from DataBank, and really excited that you joined us today. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon on another episode of Bridge. Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepointe Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepointe, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepointe, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.